Another Wednesday is come and gone, and I've got some comics. Let's talk about them. Hey, welcome to 9 Panel Grid. This week, we've seen the demolition of hate groups, DNA controlled battle suits, and medieval master chefs. But we're going to kick things off this week with Conan the Barbarian number 18, written by Jim Zub with artwork by Danica Brine. Finally, Conan is back in my life here, and I'm so excited here as we've seen delays with these issues getting actually released to the general public. And this was released a couple weeks ago, but I finally have it in hand here. This issue was awesome. It was it puts the Blackstone portion of Conan in the rear view mirror, and we're back to kind of the classic Conan tales. As now he's with Belit, he is kind of formulating where he wants to go or where they want to go for their next adventure, but they're kind of laying low right now. And when a thief comes to kind of steal something from them in the night, they form an uneasy alliance as they go after the big treasure, as opposed to the thief just stealing something small and, finding her being at the end of a sword here from Conan. It delivers on some really cool ideas here, and it really opens up the mythos of the greater Kyborian age things that are happening here, as the Stygians are now kind of like firmly in the scope of Conan, as that's kind of who they're going after and who they're seeking this treasure from. The artwork, I have to be honest, I'm longing for Roberto Della Torre on this book. I feel like when he is on the artwork, it shines. However, this is really good artwork here that we're being delivered. I do think that the colors and the art don't necessarily pair together as well as they'd have with other artists. However, again, it's still very good. Still delivers on the classic Conan tale. It still, delivers on the feels that you would want from this kind of book. All in all, I'm just happy to have Conan back. Next up, we have Cruel Kingdom number 3, the anthology series by Oni and EC Comics. This was a really fun issue as we have our three stories that are being told here, but the one that really stood out to me on this one was the Chris Cantwell story that really kind of played on the Arthurian legend and the kind of the nobility of King Arthur, as the weak and the people in poverty have come to him seeking out help and basically saying, basically giving thanks for what they have done and offering him a meal to be had within their family. And when he goes to basically, again, show his nobility and show that he's a man of the people, certain things come to play. And if you know any of these EC type stories that Oni is delivering here, you know that there's always a twist to be delivered. Kano's artwork there was fantastic. We have another story here with artwork by Andrea Muti here. The story was a little bit of a letdown. I feel like we didn't get that twist, but the artwork was still fantastic. The other story really plays on some fun ideas here as we get delivered like this, almost this Gordon Ramsay-esque cooking competition that's happening within this medieval realm. And you get kind of like the notions of some food quirks and food things that happen. And if you're a foodie, you probably know about the half developed egg that you eat with a veil over yourself as to not feel the shame of the thing that you're eating. It plays with those ideas and it plays with them perfectly. Overall, Cruel Kingdom is kind of developing into probably my favorite EC property that they're delivering here within the, I don't know, the weirder science fiction parts and the horror aspects. This one is definitely doing it for me. Next up, we have Hyde Street number 4, written by Jeff Johns with artwork by Yvonne Reese. This was another awesome tale within the Hyde Street universe as we are delivered now the origin story of one of our other characters here, this Frankenstein esque monstrosity. And we get to see kind of the heart behind this character as he's a reluctant soul seeker, if you will, who chooses to stray away from all of the actions that other people like the X ray vision man and the Boy Scout are doing. We get to see the backstory of him as he was an actor earlier on before his Hyde Street days, and you see some of the jealous actions that he has taken that led him to be who he is right now. The artwork is stunning. It's really fantastic. Although I have to be honest, when I'm looking for that horror tinge and the horror feel, Yvonne Reese isn't necessarily delivering that. There are grotesque moments. However, it feels so comic booky that it's almost my expectation that it be superhero as opposed to horror. Overall, though, I gotta say I'm having a lot of fun with all the Ghost Machine books here. This one is no different here. So Hyde Street, I definitely would recommend. All right, let's talk The Immortal Thor number 21, written by Al Ewing with artwork by Jan Bazaldua. This delivers on the big, bold verbosity that you would expect from an Al Ewing book, and especially with the character of Thor, as it delivers on those Shakespearean notions. This issue, though, like it really does so in favor of the story that's being told, as it's very exposition heavy into what Thor is thinking and maybe what's coming down the pipeline, as well as we have some dark future visions that Thor is battling with. I love the ideas that are being played with here as Scourge is in Valhalla and knows that if he is to leave and then die again, Valhalla is no longer something that he can have an expectation for. He will no longer exist. He will cease to be. Odin delivers that message. Odin allows him to leave Valhalla, gives him the means to do so. And in doing that, of course, he takes on the action of battling Thor because there is no greater deed for a warrior to do than to do battle. Really cool things that are happening here. I'm enjoying this book more and more now that it's become, again, hyper focused on the story, the greater story that's being delivered within this book. And I can't wait to see where they take it from here on out. With our next issue, let's talk Juvenile number 4, written and drawn by Jesus Oriana. I've really enjoyed this series so far as it has really delved into our main characters, and it's really been all about that character development as we have this society where teenagers are basically put within these institutions because what they're being told is that there is a virus that everyone of a certain age will contract, and if you don't take certain medications, it will eventually corrupt and kill you. What we're finding out, though, is that the government is truly just trying to suppress the fact that all people born after a certain time frame will eventually develop telepathic powers, and the older generation is by no means going to let the younger generation be allowed to have these powers and take full control over every facet of society that there could be. So there's manipulation that's taking place here, and I've loved seeing the exploration of a couple characters here. But in this issue, it's become all of the teenagers. Everyone has stopped taking their medication. They're all working with these powers, and they're trying to kind of formulate a prison break that needs to happen pretty darn quickly. The failing of this issue, though, is that I feel like the pacing totally falls off as we've again been delivered character moments where this issue, now that everyone has their powers, we don't get to spend time with people kind of formulating how it is to work those powers and what it means to have been lied to this entire time. So it feels kind of like a little bit of a whiplash kind of issue as we're kind of like taking it slow, and all of a sudden we're up to 70 miles per hour, albeit it is a very good issue and it kind of sets us up for where the end game is going to be, as there's only really a couple issues that are going to be left within this series. Overall, this issue was a bit of a letdown in comparison. However, it does set us up for the end game of the series. Next up, we have Monkey Meat The Summer Batch number 1, written and drawn by Junie Ba. This was an awesome story for Juniba to take on off of the heels of The Boy Wonder, which he had just finished up maybe a couple months ago. And I say that because part of this is just, it's like this fun, satirical, pointed look at the world of Monkey Meat. And it's almost like this travel brochure of all of these adventures that you could have within like three stories that are kind of told within this issue. One of those stories, the standout story, if you will, is kind of like the notion of these fictional characters being pulled into the real world, but when they're pulled into the real world and made real, decades of history and all of the adventures that they've gone on and all the trials and tribulations are now crammed into their brain, and it doesn't necessarily sit well with them. It kind of drives them mad. They have very real emotions and feelings towards these things that have happened, and when you toss on top of that the fact that they understand that they have creators who ran them through all of these events that led them to be the way that they are, well, they kind of, take a little bit of issue with that, and they kind of express those issues as well. I love the exploration of that idea, which isn't heavy handed and it's not heavy at all. In fact, it is still very fun. It's a little pointed, but again, it's a look at some of the stories that we've read as comic book appreciators year in and year out. So to see that kind of take place in the comic, but outside of the scope of the comic adventure itself, it's a really cool idea. Junie Ba is definitely a unique creator, and this is definitely a unique book. Is it going to be for everyone? No. Was it for me? Yeah, kind of. All right, let's talk Poison Ivy number 31, written by G. Willow Wilson with artwork by Brian Lovell. Coming off of the heels of what we had just been delivered within the last couple issues of Poison Ivy, there was a lot of revelations. And off of that, this issue kind of felt a little bit exposition heavy, a little bit side questy, but that's kind of okay because I feel like this is the breather issue. This is kind of like us recalibrating, getting our footing again, and finding out where the character of Pamela Isley is going to go from here. So we kind of start to pick on some of the pieces up that have been delivered within those other issues here, as the Gray gave Janet from HR an acorn and basically had told her, hey, if you're ever having conversations and these things come up, just have us present so we can listen in and, pick up on the details that are happening here. And she kind of agrees to go along with this, and in fact she really tries to put those actions into play here haphazardly a little bit, but she still tries to do so. And I don't know how I feel about that, to be honest with you. I haven't read this from issue number 1, but I've definitely read enough issues to, I feel like, have a good understanding of the relationship between Janet and Pamela. And for her to do this feels off brand. I don't necessarily know the motivation that Janet has to turn her back on the character of Pamela in this way. So maybe I'm missing some details. And if I'm so, if that's happening, leave me a comment down below. Let me know what I'm missing here. Overall, it was a very enjoyable issue here. Again, it was a recalibration. So now I'm ready to kind of pivot and jump back into the greater story to find out where Pamela is going to go from here. Remember how I said I loved having Conan back in my life? Let's talk The Savage Sword of Conan, number 7, primarily written by Roy Thomas with artwork by Roberto Della Torre. So this is the magazine size format of this, anthology series for Conan, and this issue really stood out, like really, really stood out. This is kind of letting Roy Thomas, who had written the character of Conan over at Marvel when they had the property in the 70s and 80s, letting him kind of take back the reins and tell this massive story. And man, it hit so hard. This was just a classic Conan story that didn't feel classic. If you would have put this within the pages of Conan the Barbarian as a one shot, man, it would have felt right. It would have felt just like Jim Zub was writing it right here and right now. That's kind of like how firm and understanding and how, like, I don't know, great a writer like that can take over on that book. On top of that, like I was saying, I was longing for for Roberto Della Torre to deliver another Conan story. Man, I see why he wasn't on Conan proper, because this was a massive book where this took over like the majority of the magazine size issue, and it was totally worth it. The imagery was awesome. It delivers on all the classic feelings of the Conan adventures here. It was perfect for Savage Sword as opposed to just Conan proper. And on top of that, we get delivered this newsprint paper in this black and white story, which kind of like it got to deliver something that I don't think that we get nowadays, because we're always seeking perfection. But some of the ink smears that happen on the paper or the printing imperfections, I loved seeing that, because that's what we got with those older issues of Savage Sword way back in the day. To see that now, those imperfections, to me, kind of made it perfect. I'm so happy that Savage Sword was back, that I got it in my hands here. And again, Conan's back in our lives here. So Savage Sword of Conan, if you're okay getting an oversized magazine issue, I think that this is probably the best thing that's going to make you get one of those magazine sized short boxes. All right, let's talk Space Ghost number 10, written by David Pepose with artwork by Jonathan Lau. So I have no background with this character. I wasn't a fan of the comic stylings of him with the Alex Toth creation. I didn't really even watch the talk show, version of this character that they had on Adult Swim, but I've heard a lot of good things. I've had this recommended to me over and over and over, and it was time to finally pull the trigger. So I spent this weekend catching up on Space Ghost, and I'm really glad that I did. This is delivering a story that feels classic in the way that you would expect from the property and like the origination of the property, albeit it's faithful to those classic ideas but told in a new way. This issue kind of delivers on one of the tropes that I love, which is kind of like the dark version of yourself and doing battle with that dark version. However, that dark version here is a future version who is doing nothing more than trying to right the wrongs that they've already experienced. But the current day version of our character can't comprehend what that truly means. And when you're on a tight time schedule, there's no time for explanations. You just need to take action. All the while, though, a heroic character can't help but be heroic. So while there is a choice to be made to stop an action from happening or save a life, the answer is kind of easy and they choose to save a life. It was a really great kind of, I don't know, culmination of that character, and to see how much things change and how much they can stay the same. Jonathan Lau's artwork on here is really rendered fantastically. It's gritty when it needs to be, but most importantly, I feel like the energy that is portrayed within these pages here is really great. The visual storytelling for the action set pieces totally work within this book. So overall, I'm absolutely like elated over the fact that I'm now reading and a fan of Space Ghost. Next up, we have Storm number 6, written by Miroe Iodele with artwork by Luciano Vecchio. Unfortunately, we're now stuck into a book that has had been on the heels of one tie-in with One Nation Under Doom or One World Under Doom, and now we're stuck with this X-Man hunt. And I think that this book did a fantastic job working within the realms of the Doom-centric tie-in. But now we're shifting right back into another tie-in, and I got to be honest, it does make this book suffer. Now, does it suffer to the magnitude of other books? No, I still really enjoyed this issue, and I think that it's the accolades of Miroe's writing that really make this work. However, it's still a tie-in, and it still falls into some of the tired tropes that we see in tie-ins. The best parts of the tie-in is the fact that we get this great conversation between Aurora and Professor X, as it is truly a back and forth. They have agreements, they have disagreements. Partially, they don't see eye to eye, but there's a meeting of the minds here and there is an understanding to be had. On the flip side, the bad parts are the fact that, especially with X-Men, we always get these events where there is, teammate versus teammates. And this is a classical pairing here as we go all the way back to Uncanny X-Men 201, where Storm and Cyclops were fighting to become the leaders of this new team of X-Men. So I like that they're playing with that relationship. But like how many times do we need to get X-Men fighting X-Men because there's a disagreement? I feel like that's not a new idea. It's not a fun idea. It's not one that I think is worth exploring anymore, but I understand why they're trying to put that forth within this whole tie-in crossover, if you will. I think it's handled okay. The artwork definitely helps out in those moments here, as at least it keeps those action set pieces fun and exciting. However, again, the idea itself was flawed to me. So the writing, no matter how good it was, couldn't live up to something that always was going to be a little bit mediocre. I'm excited to see where they go from here now that the crossover portion will be put into the rearview mirror, as I want to start kind of diving into these cosmic ideas now that we know that Aurora is kind of the herald, if you will, of one of these universal concepts. So, Storm, this issue was just decent, but it was, in regards to comparison to other tie ins, it actually kind of stands above the rest. Next up, we have The Ultimates, number 10, written by Dennis Camp with artwork by Juan Frigeri. I had once said that the Ultimates was the glue of the Ultimate Universe, and now I kind of feel like the Ultimates is the premier series to be reading within the Ultimate Universe, as now it's delivering like some of the biggest, boldest moments of any book within this universe's line. We're kind of like getting to develop the character of Steve Rogers as a team leader now, as Iron Lad has been put to the side here. Now it's been revealed that he is healing, not dead, but he's not ready to go out on the battlefield yet. And we're taking our team basically into the camp of the Red Skulls, who is kind of an organization similar to Hydra. But we see that the Red Skull is kind of a mantle that is handed down from person to person to person as they keep this group going, which, for all intents and purposes, is a white nationalist hate group. So the Ultimates do battle with them, but in doing battle, there's a lot of big things that are kind of revealed here, and we get a flashback moment where we kind of see what the world has what's happened to the world here since World War II and the invaders with Jim Hammond and Captain America and Namor. What's happened to them, particularly Namor, and what's happened to some other characters who are now maybe villainous. I don't want to give away too many spoilers here, but it's absolutely worth it. We get to see those characters. Juan Frigeri and Dennis Camp are totally working well together. I love the action, I feel like, has grown as the series has gone from issue to issue, and Juan is doing some of his best work, especially within this issue itself here, as we get delivered again some of these big bold scenes that get to take place. Overall, I'm having so much fun with this book. I think it's absolutely worthwhile, and it might be one of Marvel's very best books. Next up, we have Ultramega number 8, written and drawn by James Herron. So, first and foremost, if you're looking for understanding, breakdowns, or any kind of sense to be made from this issue or this second arc of the series, you're not going to get it here because I'm not exactly sure what is happening here. This series has totally gone from something that was small in scope, man can turn into giant version of himself to fight kaiju, to now exploring the nature of these kaiju and the extraterrestrial nature of these ultra mega, as it's like a whole society of beings who are kind of have a lot of bravado and this braggadocious nature to themselves here, and they almost come off like, I don't know, sports bro jocks that are really kind of jerks. It's weird and it's wild. It's definitely opening up the scope of the story. However, in doing so, it is getting weird and wacky and really hard to follow. But the selling point of this book is definitely the artwork by James Herron, because you're still being delivered all those grotesque body horror scenes that we loved from the first arc of the story. You're still getting these absolutely crazy action set pieces that he's setting up here, where you feel the impact and the blows of every single punch that's thrown and all the gushing blood that you would see every time an injury is sustained too. It's just awesome. Like, and on top of that, when you come into the extraterrestrial cosmic ideas here, you can just see and sense the fun he's having creating and crafting all of these weird, wild creatures, because it's got to be fun. It's fun to look at. It had to have been like 10 times more fun to actually draw those things on the page. So, if you're looking for weird, wild, nonsensical books, Ultramega is definitely your thing. If you're looking for a clean, concise story that's going to be told from a beginning, middle, and end, you know, maybe consider a different book. And with our runner up book of the week, let's talk Two Face number 4, written by Christian Ward with artwork by Fabio Veras. This series has really developed into something that I've enjoyed more and more as each issue has been delivered here, as it's almost kind of turned itself into like the fight club of the DC universe, as our character Harvey Dent is truly like the Ed Norton character within that pages of Fight Club. Harvey Dent has taken full control over his body and his mentality, and he's tamped down Two-Face. But what we learn from this issue is that Two-Face wasn't a manifestation of the time when acid was thrown on his face. It's truly kind of something that he's used as a coping mechanism all through his life, from his very early days as a child and some of the actions that took place there, and all the way through adulthood. It was just really the act of the acid being thrown on his face that kind of gave it a name and gave it a reason to take control. As Harvey couldn't deal with the pain of real life, Two-Face then took over. What we get in this issue is kind of all within the psyche of Harvey and Two-Face as they're struggling for control over this person, this body, and knowing that Harvey was the DA and law means so much to him. It only makes sense for this to take place all within the courtroom of his mind. The personas are split. They're doing battle. It's a battle of the wits and the minds, and it was really awesome to see. Christian Ward with this series, I feel like has leveled up as a writer, and the visuals in this book here by Fabio, and particularly the colors when we're dealing with the mind of Harvey, man, it makes every page just pop out here. So I'm having so much fun with this book. It's a really great exploration into the character, and I think it's really setting up for the end game of this series here, as it's a limited series. We only have a couple more left to go. I'm excited to see how this leaves the character of Harvey Dent and what we could look forward to after Christian Ward's time on the book. And with my top comic of the week, let's talk The Tin Can Society, number 6. Written by Peter Warren with artwork by Francesco Mobili. I've said it before, but it continues to be the truth. This book zags when you think it's going to zig, and every cliffhanger ending that it delivers when you think you have an understanding, it pulls the rug out from underneath you, but in such a fantastic way. It subverts every expectation that you have. Our group of friends here who are investigating the murder of their other friend who developed the suit of armor, if you will, almost like an Iron Man-esque type of armor, have now kind of started unraveling more of the mystery here. We kind of know who the murderer of their friend is, but not necessarily, not quite. What we do learn is that the suits can only be navigated by this person, this individual who has now been murdered, or better put, his DNA. So what we find out is that the infant that was in the suit previously, we find out that it was put there through the means of controlling these suits, as this child was put basically into an artificial coma just by way to allow the suits to be powered and then controlled by the organization that this friend was in control of previously. So we're learning more and more about like all of the inner workings for all of the people that are involved with this, the person who birthed the child, the person who put all these actions into play, and our friend who is murdered, or maybe not. So this is again developing into a great series. We have 2 more issues left, I believe, and this is setting the stage for a fantastic ending now, because there's only so many cliffhangers you could deliver us here. We only got 1 more that you could potentially put us through the ringer on. But when it comes to being put through the ringer, I'm kind of totally into it for this book because it's absolutely worthy of top comic of the week. So that's what I've got for you this week, but I'm more curious. What did you read and what were your thoughts? Do me a favor, like, share, and subscribe and be part of the panel. Leave me a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll talk to you next week.